Good evening. This is December 19th, 2017. The time is 6:35. This is the McLendon-Chisholm City Council special meeting. I'd like for everyone to rise as we for the pledges of the flag and the invocation led by Councilmember Herron. Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. It's better.
Let us pray. Oh, Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight, Lord. We just lift you up and praise your holy name. We thank you for all the blessings and the love that you show us. Lord, we just ask you to fill us with your light and your love. Help us to be better stewards and help us to live a life that honors and brings glory to you, Lord. We ask you to watch our words, our thoughts, and our actions so that what we do brings honor and glory to you. Lord, we also ask a blessing upon all of our constituents who are out there in this rain tonight. Lord, we needed the rain, but watch over them and keep them safe. Lord, in this Christmas time as we get ready to honor your Son who came to save us, Lord, we thank you for that gift. Lord, we love you and we thank you for all you're doing in our lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I'm looking out in the room, and I don't think it's necessary for me to read the rules of decorum. Rules of decorum are in place, but I see a lot of familiar faces. I think all of you have always been respectful, and I appreciate it. So I'm not going to go through that procedure, if that's okay. All right. With that, we're going to move to item number 4, citizens' comments, which is an opportunity for citizens who reside inside the city limits of McLendon-Chisholm to speak to the council. Citizens should stand at the podium, state their name and address, and then express concerns or questions. Note that state law does not permit the council to deliberate items that are not on the agenda. Concerns may be referred to the staff or scheduled for consideration at a future city council meeting. We also have a pad up there that you can put your name and address. It will help our city secretary, especially with the spelling of names. They sometimes go quickly. The floor is now open for citizens' comments.
Gary Nickel, 612 Kentwood. I'm disappointed with the decision the council made last week regarding emergency services, and I want to urge you to reconsider for the following 4 reasons. First, failure to let voters decide. Some of you campaigned that voters should decide major issues, but did you ever discuss letting the public decide this one? I know you've been working for weeks looking at options, which is great, and I applaud you for that effort. But it appears that all of you had decided before the vote which way you were going, and with one exception, you paid no attention to those who assembled here to voice their support for the current contract. Turning a blind eye to public input makes a mockery of the process, and doing so will cause citizens to lose confidence in your ability to govern fairly. Let's not allow that to happen. Your job here in this building is important, but also time-consuming and mostly thankless. We appreciate your hard work, we really do. But don't make your job harder by opening a rift within the community. Please listen to input from all sides and keep an open mind before you decide what's best for us. Number 2, lack of communication from the council to us, the citizens. Last week, I stood here and spoke just a few words. I didn't tell you which contract option I thought you should choose. I only urged you to pick one that wouldn't increase the response time, and if you didn't, to explain why. You didn't explain anything. In fact, you didn't respond to any of the questions or challenges posed by anyone of the citizens who spoke. Most of you didn't provide any rationale for the decisions you made. Would you agree that we should trust you to do the right thing because you've studied the issues in great detail and understand them better than we do? We expect you to be accountable to us and to explain why you make the choices you do. So now I need you to help me understand how the all-volunteer option is better than what we have now. But first, you should explain how you're going to ensure that we'll have enough volunteers to answer the calls. That's a serious issue because right now there's no evidence that we'll even have a fire department next year. Number 3, lack of openness and accountability. During the mayor's remarks last week, you claimed to have received 64 calls from supporters, but you brought no evidence of such support. Where were the letters they could have written? It's unfair to hide behind 64 unnamed citizens while ignoring 50 of us who actually came to the meeting and expressed our views in public. That's not being open or accountable. As a councilman, you said you only represented the people who voted for you. While that position is debatable for a member of council, it's completely inappropriate for the mayor. I won't deny that there are two sides to this issue, but your us versus them mentality is completely inappropriate for a person in your position. You're the mayor for all of us, so please, could you start listening to all of us? And to the other members of council, thank you, Mr. Orchard, for listening and giving consideration to those who spoke out. To the rest of you who voted without comment or justification, I'm disheartened that you didn't think you owed us an explanation for your position. I hope you'll be more forthright in the future. And last, number 4, the city's website did not provide enough information to explain why you favored option C. The website should not be a political soapbox. Its pages should contain facts and rationale for both what is being proposed for current issues and what was decided on past issues. The facts should be presented in a clear and unbiased manner that everyone can comprehend. Using the city's website to malign the competence and integrity of anyone is inappropriate and unprofessional. I suggest the council take steps to edit all current and future content to ensure that our city's image will not continue to be tainted. Thank you.
Michael Davis, 106 Cheney Place, McLendon-Chisholm. I'm the Chisholm Crossing Phase 1 and 2 HOA president, excluding Phase 4. I represent 190 voting citizens of McLendon-Chisholm. That's slightly greater than the 60 phone calls that may or may not have been in support of it. And at the same time, triple the 50 people that showed up at these meetings in opposition to the actions you guys have taken. We informally have discussed this amongst our community and have unanimously been found in opposition of the actions taken at the council as of late for the fire department, both in the propaganda approach to trying to communicate with the community, but at the same time with the deliberate ignorance of any opposition fact. I have spoken with multiple of you on multiple occasions, citing facts and stipulations, not opinions, not references, not emotional or dispassionate discussions, but rather a simple, straight fact of what the fire department does and does not do, what it represents and what it does not represent. And yet all of those statements have somehow been ignored in the decision-making. And while it is certainly a representative government and is your ability to take in content and then choose to act on that content to your own desire, it is not representative of the community to stand behind a quiet majority that is somehow unspoken and unrepresentative, while ignoring the loud majority that you have chosen to ignore, to marginalize, because the opinion does not matter that which what you wish to push. There was a statement in propaganda pushed out there that this was a decision made at gunpoint, that we were bent over a barrel with the fire department each and every year as the fire department contracts came up for budget. And while I could see the emotion behind that particular response, I remind council that we as the city demanded this type of premium service contract. You know, there have been references that other 5,000 citizen cities do not have this. Small country towns do not have this, that we do not deserve this. But I would also challenge that with Rockwall County is the wealthiest county per capita in the state. It's one of the wealthiest counties per capita in the nation, and the demographics per capita in McLendon-Chisholm are superior to Rockwall proper. We are not a small farming town that is made up of goat herders and cheap and have one gas station to pop through. This is a town of affluent cities, citizens with houses that reflect that. And the cost to the city and to the citizens of the city is not disproportionate to what we were prepared to offer. This is not something that is too expensive for any homeowner in the city that's spoken to come up with. It is certainly not the most expensive piece of tax legislation that we deal with on an annual basis. The city is the least of the taxes that I handle, and the fire department, as a portion of the city, is the least portion of that. It is less than I spend on soda. It is not a critical thing, and I don't mean that in a joking manner. I mean that in that while $300,000 is not a small sum, in the scale of government, in the scale of administration that the city does, that is not a substantial fund. And in the scale of what we are asking for and what we require out here in the boonies, away from everything else, it is also a requirement. Now, we've had plenty of emotional and divisive responses from the council demonstrating how they've developed a grudge against the volunteer fire department leadership. And I call that out explicitly because I feel that there does appear one. I understand you can't respond to that, and that may not be the case of everybody, but there is a very apparent grudge between leadership values, and that grudge, that conflict, exists on both sides of that discussion. I would challenge anybody to offer that the fire department has not developed a grudge against council. I think that's true, and I think that has led us to the stalemate that we're at now, where both sides of the parties, both of them under great conviction of doing the right thing for the right reasons, have now put the city at risk in favor of protecting their pride. And I disagree with that. And these are not a discussion that needs to be carried with pride. Now, what we've failed to hear is recognition of the value of the fire department beyond the 6% that involves actual fires. And I heard the most asinine statement in the last meeting and repeated online by someone else that smoke detectors are what we should be using. That smoke detectors protect more people than firefighters protect. And while that is true in the sake of preventative measurement, right? Finding a fire while it's small and resolving that based on the smoke before it becomes a big inflame certainly makes sense. But then we choose to ignore preventative measures as in having a fire department of quality and size before we actually need a fire department. Because that's another thing we can't do. We can't just spin up a fire department whenever we want just because the need shows up at that point. The fire department is like insurance, right? You pay for it because you might need it. Best case scenario, you never need it. And in all that time, you lose money until you need it. At which point it provides an immeasurable service, one that maybe you could have paid for, or maybe you couldn't. But the point is that you don't know, and you have to make that investment to protect lives. That's what it's there for. Where was it going? The one thing that stands out in this discussion is that we have a fire department that models an as-a-service solution. Now, as a service in the digital era might be a desktop as a service, or more popular, a software as a service. Google is a software as a service. It provides no immediate function. There's no tentative solution. You don't buy Google. You use Google. You use Google email. And when you go there, and it's providing a service, and that service is paid for, in their case, by ad revenue, and that's what allows it to be free for you. We are doing the same thing for the fire department. And yet, in all the contract discussions that come up, you think that you are buying or renting the fire department, but that is not. This is an as-a-service model. What you should be doing is paying for the outcome that you want. You have a stipulation on standards that you require, and in contrast to that, they provide a cost of what it takes to meet that standard. What we don't do is say that I want these standards at this cost, and that's the only thing available. Now, for example, in this discussion, you guys have taken the county contract that the city applied for and used that as a metric for what you are willing to pay for an all-volunteer system. But on top of that, you decide to add performance metrics and penalties that do not exist in the county contract. Now, you can't rationally think as a businessman that someone can take a county contract that has totally different set of parameters and then use that same funding standard for your city contract and then hold them, the vendor, accountable for choosing to deny that contract. They've already agreed to that pay for a certain level of performance. And now you want to increase that performance while keeping the pay the same. That's not how it happens in the business world. That was a contract destined for failure. I would be surprised, if not ashamed, that the fire department in any business sense would accept that contract as provided. That was money wasted and time wasted by the citizens and by the council investing in a contract that you know won't work. It is merely a show of force to demonstrate your willingness to take this to the sheets. That is an unprofessional approach to waste our time and money so that you can make a point that you are serious about wanting to get genuine metrics. Now, what I don't disagree with is in options 2 and 3 of the contracts you guys demonstrated but chose not to act on, and that is defining performance metrics for the fire department. Now, we've asked for a premium fire department. I have no doubts in the requirements to make a premium fire department. You don't just give $300,000 and say, hey, you do what you want, I will trust you do it. Set standards, but you pay for those standards as well. And you hold them accountable for those standards, but more importantly, you pay for them. That's what you do. If you want DSL, you don't pay for dial-up internet. If you want fiber, you don't pay for DSL. There's a performance standard that goes along with it, and there's a payment that goes with that standard. You can't have it both ways. Now, we've already accounted for the cost. We know that cost was coming. There wasn't a kickback over the cost. You guys saved money because your property values went up. You raised the revenue of the city. You said it was a tax cut. I'll allow all of that. I'll even say that on the cost of from being the city, it's still cheaper than living in any of the neighboring cities for what we have to offer. But there isn't a reason for us to go through an attempt to diminish $300,000 down to $90,000 annually, or $32,000 annually, $90,000 over the term of a 3-year contract you guys want to force upon the city, hoping that we will somehow, stay at the exact same service level. There was zero reason from the citizen side to drive this cost savings. We're looking at $200 to $250 per household on average, based on the recent the census studies. There isn't a proper one. There's a census estimates based on the U.S. government. Based on that, you're talking $200 per household. That's what we're saving. That's what each one of you on the council that live here are saving. You save $200 so that we can risk this, and you're saving this under the guise of fire usage. Now, you are 40 times more likely to engage a firefighter doing anything other than putting out a fire, but we're only talking about fires. When your kid falls in the swimming pool, you don't have 7.5 minutes to wait for the ambulance to get there. You have whatever it takes for someone to get there. That might be 7.5 minutes. Great. That's a good catch. What I want is the guy who's sitting down the street a half mile away and can be here. Maybe they get here faster, and that maybe is worth $200 a year. When your grandfather has a stroke and needs to be adjusted in that moment, when your car flips over because the road is slippery, the ambulance is not the one who comes there and drags you out of that car. The ambulance is not the one who is coming to put out the fire in your backyard. Maybe they get there. Maybe they don't. Maybe they get there, and that's not what they do, and they simply have to wait for someone else to show up. The fire department shows up, and if they're doing something besides putting a fire out, that is not a negative. It is not $1,600 a call wasted for some guy to protect, to get some car unlocked. That is a person that I paid for. That is an insurance policy that I paid for that is, while sitting idle, finding some other use in this community, which is what it should do. Now, you could say, don't respond to that, but I'm paying for it, and I'm probably not going to have a fire. So why not get the most out of it? You had an insurance policy for your car, but you never used it. That's great. But what if while you weren't using it, it could do something useful? That's what we're talking about for an as-a-service model of the fire department. You're not paying for 2 specific guys. You're paying for a coverage. I want to make sure that someone gets to wherever I want in my city in a set time. I want to make sure that is actionable and rollable. If that means I need 2 people, if that means I need 4 people, I don't care. What I need is to make sure that somebody is there. And if the fire department decides they can do it in 2, great. If they need 6, that's their problem. I'm paying for an outcome. You guys are going at this contract negotiation entirely wrong because you're missing the model. And no amount of last-minute searching on the internet for stats to support your solution is going to make up that difference in business. For some of you who I've communicated over email on this, I was able to data mine information that you guys had overlooked in a very short period of time in my free time. I'm good at that type of stuff. That's great. But the point is we have more stuff out there, more content available that you guys would need to research to make this decision at the level you're trying to make this decision. We don't have the budget to run a fire department by ourselves. You don't have the capital. You've got no assets. You've got no resources. There isn't a solid second plan. And that's not a case of being held over a wheelbarrow. You could certainly do a special assessment. You could raise taxes. You could force the issue and spend the money. But in the meantime, the quality of it is down. And that's not worth the risk, not for $200 a household. 1 minute. I'm still yielding the floor to myself. No, you know what? I don't want to take any more of you guys' time tonight. Like, the bottom line is, I'm here as a representative of government, as a burden of leadership within my community. I would just assume not be here, just as I'm sure you guys would just assume not be here. We're here because we care about this community. We'd love to be home, catching up on Netflix, eating fresh home-cooked meals, hanging out with the kids. You know, I appreciate you guys coming here. Hopefully, that's mutual, and you understand that we're not here because we want to be adversarial. We're here because we also feel passionate about this community, and we want this community to be well and to progress into a future superior to all other communities around us. That's why we've volunteered on the HOA. That's why some people volunteer in the fire departments or in the Board of Adjustments. It's a reason we're taking time out of our lives to come to this council, not because we want to be ignored and not because we want to hear ourselves talk. We're coming because we are passionate about this community the same as you are, and we want to make sure our voices are heard and that you guys understand that it goes both ways. The respect from us and the respect from you meet in the middle, and I'd just like to see more of that as we go forward. Now, I don't have any illusions that you guys will immediately change your minds on what we do, but when the inevitable contract comes back from the fire department and it's rejected, which any decent businessman would do, I would hope you take this into consideration as you negotiate the next version of that and try to come up with something that is reflective as a premium service with premium metrics and a premium cost to go along with that. Not in a case of which leadership, which person is right. Was it council? Was it the fire department? But rather, what is the best choice for us, and set the pride aside. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Davis, can I ask a couple of questions? You presented yourself as the representative of Chisholm Crossing HOA.
Phase 1
It is,
and 2.
sorry?
Phase 1 and 2.
It is my understanding that in most HOAs, the HOA is not a political organization. Is it my understanding that that you do not have such restriction and that you are speaking on behalf of the people of Chisholm Crossing 1 and or the phase 2 and
1 and 2.
1 and 2, that they have authorized you to speak politically on their behalf? Is that my understanding?
No, that's not correct.
Okay. Can you please clarify?
Yeah, certainly. If you read back the audio, see, I did not claim to be standing here representing all 100. I simply said our community represents 190 voting citizens of the city of McLendon-Chisholm. I am here certainly as the HOA president. I wanted to make sure that was clarified in my position, same as you would clarify your position.
But your position as an HOA president, again,
Yes.
you keep reiterating there are state laws. So I wanted to make sure,
Yes.
because I was an HOA president, and I was restricted from speaking politically on behalf of the HOA. So I'd like clarification. Are you speaking on behalf of the people of Chisholm Crossing Phase 1 and 2?
I am not speaking on behalf
Thank
of
you
the
very
people.
much.
I will say, state law does not does not allow the city council to speak in reference to this. So this was
I'm sorry, what?
The state law doesn't allow you to respond to questions to my.
No, I was asking I was asking for your identity, sir. I was just asking for your identity. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Mark Kippett, 31 Fireside Drive, McLendon-Chisholm. My intention was not to make a statement tonight, but changed my mind. I want to focus on item 11. in the feasibility study moving forward, which I fully support the efforts of the council to move in that direction. Quite clearly, we're a growing community, modernizing community. The whole county is moving in that direction. I've had the same discussion with county commissioners. And as we move forward collectively, certainly there would be a need to do as stated here, a feasibility study, as I would call it, an analysis of alternatives to see what the best options were moving forward in terms of the fire department. Makes perfect sense in context of need, context of organize, train, and equip, to use the expression from the military, and certainly then the cost analysis that comes out of that. So I believe that needs to be done. I encourage the council to move forward on that. I would encourage the council to do it this way, though. McLendon-Chisholm's a wonderful community. I don't like the characterization to say it's a bedroom community of Dallas, but certainly it is a professional working community as it has transitioned from being a farming community. It's not the community it was 20 years or 40 years ago in terms of farming as its agricultural base. It's now a professional community with most people that live in the city are working professionals in some way, shape, or form, whether they're dual income over in Sonoma Verde, can be in my neighborhood, lots of very talented individuals, senior individuals that have a lot of insight. So I would encourage that study to be done using a collective knowledge of the community of McLendon-Chisholm, and my guess is it can be done for free. It wouldn't cost the taxpayers a dime, other than probably some printing and reproduction kinds of costs, administrative costs. And at the end of the day, that will give us as good, if not better, insight than so-called consultants who often provide expertise. And I say that because as in my position at Raytheon Missile Systems in Tucson, where I guided the business strategy for a $7 billion company, we used consultants. And I found that generally the results that we got out of that were not necessarily as helpful as they could have been. And I'm often reminded of the business case back when cellular telephone was starting in AT&T using McKinsey, the McKinsey Group, which is a nationally and internationally known, very large consulting group, stated with absolute conviction that cellular telephones would never amount to anything, that it would be a niche market for the rich, and therefore it shouldn't really be invested in. Well, needless to say, they were not only 100% wrong, but 1,000% wrong. Cellular, I can't imagine us living today without cellular technologies. First, I suspect everybody in this room has a smartphone. So consultants can be very wrong. Use the community. I think you'll get a much better output from that as you move through your alternative analysis that would look at how it should be structured, how it should be led, what kinds of facilities are needed, and then those kinds of timelines, because this obviously would be a multi-year effort to move forward, and then based on the desires of the city and what it projects moving forward. The second comment, I want to follow up to the engagement that just took place. In my mind, that was not a political discussion. The HOA was asked the basic question of the type of fire service that it preferred. If that's a political question that has to be resolved through a political process, then the obvious answer would be put it onto the ballot at the next municipal election and ask it as that to come out. But I think state law would prohibit us from doing that, as I understand it. So I don't see it as really a political discussion. I see it as an expression of what the desires are for fire protection for that community that I live in with Mr. Davis. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will close citizen comments. We're now going to receive input regarding proposed revisions to the city McLendon-Chisholm Comprehensive Plan. The public hearing addresses both items 6 and 7 related to the comprehensive plan, and it is the second of 2 public hearings. The first public hearing was held on December 14th at the December 14th Planning and Zoning meeting. Madam Secretary, do you want to speak to this real quick?
Yes, I was at the P&Z meeting on the 14th.
Is your mic on? Yeah, it is. Okay.
Can you hear me? I was at the P&Z meeting on the 14th. Mike Coker has written you a memo which is connected to your packet, so hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. What we're looking at here is this public hearing is going to actually address 2 items, items 6 and 7 on the agenda. So the first of that is one we've been talking about for a long time, and that's changing the land use plan off of cattle bearing and 550 from commercial to agricultural. And the second one is actually just adjusting the location of City Hall because it was marked incorrectly on the original plan. And so that's what this input is going to allow for this evening.
Okay, with that, we will move, and the public hearing is now open. The floor is open for these to hear citizen comments. Okay, the public hearing for item the proposed revisions of the City of McLendon-Chisholm Comprehensive Plan related to items 6 and 7 on the agenda is closed. A motion to approve an ordinance revising the City of McLendon-Chisholm future land use is necessary or is available should someone wish to make it. The floor is open.
I'd like to make that motion.
All right, Councilman Woodham has made a motion to approve the proposed revisions of the City of McLendon-Chisholm Comprehensive Plan. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Turnbull is seconded. Mr. Woodham, you have the floor to speak to your motion.
Okay, basically what we're talking about here is Lot 3, Block 1. I assume everybody has the map that we're looking at. I think it makes sense for the city and also the neighborhoods bordering this particular piece of property to be rezoned from commercial to agriculture. It fits within our ordinances, our comprehensive city plan, and also just basic common sense of how this particular land in reference to both neighborhoods would be in relation to each other. So that's pretty much why I want to support changing this from commercial to agricultural.
Thank you, Mr. Woodham. Mr. Turnbull.
I have no comment.
Are there any other, is there any other discussion? Hearing none. The motion on the floor, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 8, another public hearing. To continue from November 14th, 2017, the council will receive input regarding proposed amendments.
Mayor, we have 7. I'm sorry. Item 7.
Yeah, we have to do 7. We have to modify the plan.
It's 2 different.
I apologize. You know what? I was actually, okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I probably didn't explain item 5 very well, but we broke it into 2 separate ordinances.
That's
Just
right.
because it was cleaner that way.
That's
I
right.
should have explained that.
Pascal's. All right. I apologize. Okay, so we'll now, so that was item 6? Yes, and we're good. You're okay. So I'm, thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't explain well when
No,
I
you
wrote
did
it.
fine. This is completely my fault. So The floor is now open for a motion on item number 7.
I'll motion that one as well.
Councilmember Woodham, is motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Turnbull. Councilmember Woodham, you have the floor to speak to your motion.
I just want to piggyback on the previous motion, and I think it's best for the city, the neighborhoods, and that surrounding area.
Thank you, Mr. Woodham. Mr. Turnbull?
Well, I think it's a good idea that our map shows where our city hall actually sits. So yes, I do think it should be modified, and it's necessary to do the previous ordinance, so I support it.
Very good. Other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries by unanimously. We'll now move to item 8, which is a public hearing to continue the public hearing from November 14, 2017. The council will receive input regarding proposed amendments to Chapter 14 of the Code of Ordinances, zoning regulations pertaining to zoning board of adjustment and wireless communications facility. Madam Secretary, would you like to provide an explanation?
Yes. This has actually been postponed previously, as you'd mentioned. Mike Coker and David Pascal worked very, very hard and diligently on this, trying to get the language correct so that there was no conflict between state law and federal law as far as wireless communications, because sometimes that can preempt local laws. So basically what this does is the revisions are contained within 2 sections of the zoning ordinance, sections 1-15 dealing with the Zoning Board of Adjustment and the responsibilities pertaining to wireless communication facilities, and section 6-11 dealing with wireless communication facilities as well. So what this does is it changes the procedure so that if any new applicant wants a wireless communication facility, a tower or such, they would have to come to planning and zoning for a specific use permit if it's in a residential area. The language was also cleaned up in the ordinance so that the term agricultural is, for all purposes of this ordinance, is considered residential. So outright permission is still allowed if the tower is under 65 feet tall and it's in a commercial district. There are still some outright allowed places where it can go without going to specific use permit. But for pretty much all residential areas, including agricultural areas, it would have to go for that specific use permit.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Secretary. The floor is now open for public hearing, to receive citizens' comments for the public hearing.
There was a mess up with the copies.
I'm on the edge of my knowledge. Mark it for Empire Side. The obvious statement is we're going to need increased cell coverage in the southern half of the county. That's the obvious statement. As I understand it, AT&T's next generation for broadband wireless is going to be carried via cell towers. Landlines we're going to move beyond landlines. So as you take that into consideration, I just offer that insight. And we learned that as we tried to bring fiber into our community, and AT&T was unwilling to bring fiber in because of the infrastructure costs associated with it. And in talking with the technicians as they moved to a new technology, DSL, it was quite clear talking to them, the engineers that are running the project and the techs, that we're a couple years away from broadband wireless via cellular communication. So that's going to be huge once that happens. And certainly in this southern half of the county, we don't want to be left behind on infrastructure. Again, consistent with our economic base that we have in the city. asked a realtor to run some numbers just so I knew, and then I was surprised, maybe I guess is the right word. McLendon-Chisholm's, in the last 12 months, the average sold price of homes was 98% of asking, and was $430,000. And that includes, of course, Sonoma Verde, which is, just in number, total number, is a large number of homes sold. So clearly our, plus as we've seen with our property evaluations going up, it's a natural evolution. So just ask for council's consideration as you move forward on that, on cell towers. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. There's no action on this, correct?
Yes, item 9 is the ordinance related to.
Oh, that is the ordinance, okay.
Yes.
All right, so discussion and action regarding proposed amendment to Chapter 14 of Code of Ordinances zoning regulations pertaining to the Zoning Board of Adjustment and Wireless Communication Facility. As Lisa said, the city attorney and city planner worked diligently on this ordinance to clarify definitions and to ensure that there are no conflicts with state and federal regulations which can preempt local ordinances. This ordinance changes the procedure for applicants wanting to put a wireless communication facility in a residential area. Rather than go to the Board of Adjustment for a special exception, which we've just experienced and our city is now in a lawsuit over, which, by the way, we support what the Board of Adjustment did. An applicant now must seek a specific use permit from planning and zoning and council, just like everyone else, going through the process, and which we just think is reasonable. So there is a motion to approve that I'll entertain a motion on this item. Would anyone like the floor for a motion? Mr. Turnbull?
I move that we amend the ordinance, Section 1 through 15, Zoning Board of Adjustment, and Section 6 through 11, wireless communication facilities, to provide specific use permit requirements as set forth by the county or the city attorney.
Okay, a motion has been made for this item. Is there a second?
Second.
Who wants it? Mayor Pro Tem? Sorry. I'll get Mayor Pro Tem seconds the motion. Mr. Turnbull, you have the floor to speak to your motion.
Well, the one thing about it is it brings them in front of both the P&Z and us before they get to the point to where the basic result is either they get their way or the option is go to court. And I think it's better. I think there's a better chance of reaching a solution by having those two additional steps than having them just go straight to the BOA. So that would be my reason to support it.
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Mr. Orchard.
Along those same lines, I think it's part of the process, and to Mr. Kiput's kind of response to that. I think we all understand we're going to need coverage, but it's the right coverage, right facilities, right height, and all that. And unfortunately, the ordinance prior to this didn't read it out correctly, and so it's not like we're against having service. Believe me, I'd like to have good service in my home. So but it needs to be done in a way that doesn't lead the city into what we're doing now. So that's my support of it.
Thank you, Mr. Orchard. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
I will.
Ms. Balcom.
I just want to make sure that there's no confusion, that we are open to any service providers to come forth to offer services.
Of course.
So.
Good. That's a good point. Anyone else? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. We're going to move to item number 10, which is the Holiday Lighting Display Contest Award. Can you give me the con?
What is it?
No, can you give me the con?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Can you give me the pro?
All right, very good. Okay, so we had obviously a holiday contest, holiday lighting contest that first annual for us. We hope that this will be an ongoing thing. We had 8 houses that were nominated, and so we are. Well, do y'all want to know who won? I guess I won't draw it out. All right, so 1212 Artesia Lane by far was the house that won. Has everyone seen that house, by the way, in Brushy Creek? It's fantastic. It's worth going to. The first runner-up was 1224 Manchester Drive. Where's that located? That's Kingsbridge. And then the second runner-up was 14 Dancing Waters. Where is that located?
That's in Chisholm Crossing.
Chisholm Crossing. So we had some really outstanding homes, and a lot of us found some homes that we wished had been nominated, but we were not allowed to nominate. So hopefully next year we can do that, and we can.
We need to get a calendar.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Creep.
So we are working on the prize. It's probably going to be a gift card, but we are working on that, and also a sign for their yard for that purpose. So with that, Lisa, you can take me off now.
Can I
Yes, Mr. Orchard.
say something?
Yep.
I know to some, this looked like it was ridiculous. I know there was some comments and stuff made that, why are you worried about holiday lights and stuff when you're trying to work through other city business and stuff?
Really?
I think it's along the same lines of the Christmas tree lighting that we started last year. You got to start it somewhere, and this was kind of a last minute push of, hey, this is something good. Let's get it done. Let's not wait. I know myself. I enjoyed this twice because one was with my wife, and then the kids were out of town. They came back in town, and then they got upset that they weren't part of it, so I had to go back out last night and do it with the kids. It may seem very odd right now, but it is again community. So this is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to rip community apart. We're trying to bring it together. So this so again, it may look odd in the time that we're doing this, but I know I enjoyed it. Whoever came up with the idea, I think it's great, and I hope to see it really grow, because as I was driving around, the kids were going, well, let's vote on that house. I was like, the house isn't up. Well, can you nominate? Well, no, we can't nominate because we're judging. So next year, I want to see that list really, really grow. So that's all I have.
Or even different,
Go ahead, please.
Or even have different categories or themes, or even neighborhoods, challenging other neighborhoods. I don't know, I kind of thought that would be kind of neat, as different types of ideas.
There you go.
I don't get. Well, yeah, I thought it was fun, and I really do hope people will get out there. Mr. Turnbull?
Mr. Davis and Mr. Kippett, I know the two of you live in Chisholm Crossing. You had some very outstanding homes that were not nominated, and
Shame on the HOA.
No, not shame on the HOA. I'm
It's a
just
joke.
saying,
Calm down, it's a joke.
you really, you guys go all out. I was impressed with your community. So,
Okay, with that, we are now going, we are going to be recessing into executive session in accordance with Government Code Section 551071, consultant with attorney to conduct a private consultation with the city attorney to seek advice about pending or contemplated litigation or on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the city council under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with the Texas Open Meetings Act regarding contract for fire protection services with the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department and related options. The time is 7:25 p.m.
it out to as much, but a lot of it was the kids' activities on the weekends, you know, because I was already gone, you know, in Dallas and working during the weekdays. So I had, you know, some weeknights, but then, so my, you know, my big contribution was around on the weekends. But then when the kids' activities started hitting and having the, you know, league tournaments and stuff like that, I was like, sorry guys, I can't, you know, because I don't want people to think, you know, I'm available when I'm not available, you know, so. It was good. I did so. My new company is up in McKinney, so I get to go the back way. But you know, for over 15 years, I was at 635 and Midway. Yeah, so I was in 635 here all the time. So I know that. Uh-huh. Well, it's oh well then. Perfect. Perfect. That's all I always. Yeah. Well, so yeah, I would come in late. Yeah, I'd work. You know, usually 9 to 6, you know, 7 o'clock, and you know, try to beat it. But you know, this 30 when they start, you know, the construction with coming all the way, you know, through. Yep. Yep. So, and then TxDOT's, you know, working alongside them on the, you know, the thoroughfare and stuff like that to make sure you handle the traffic, you know, through there. But you know, I remember, you know, when we were living out in Mesquite and they were working on 30, I was like, I'm not moving out Maybe that's all right. That's me here.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting back to order. The time is 8:32. There were no actions taken in executive session. I'm going to move to item 10, and as part of that, I want to speak to some of the things that, sorry, item number 11, City Government Volunteer Fire Department. I want to speak to some of the issues that that people brought up that that have come out. And first of all, if there was any cloud of doubt over why my supporters and all of our supporters don't speak out publicly, that should have been made clear Sunday when Justin Hood, who is a good friend of mine, very close friend of mine, who happens to be a fire chief in the Dallas Fire Department, when he made comments and made a case, he was eviscerated, and he was some of the comments. One individual said, "Well, you just don't understand. Let me sit down and let's talk face to face," as though he has more information and has a better understanding of fire departments than a fire chief does. Look, I realize that him being my friend to some makes him ineligible or discredits him. But this is a man who has, to be a fire chief in Dallas Fire Department, just to give a sense of what a monumental hurdle that is. When he became lieutenant, in Dallas Fire Department, you basically take a test. So every fire department every firefighter who wants to apply to be a lieutenant, you take a test, and whoever is at the top of the list, whoever makes the highest score, they're number one, and they go all the way down. And basically, if there's 10 lieutenant spots open, then those 10, the first 10 people, they get those spots. And that list stays up for a few months, and then they have to go do it all again. Well, Justin, when he was going through his lieutenant's exam, his son David was born. He was studying for that, and his son David was born with a heart defect. And he spent days at the hospital with his son. His house, for anyone who knows the family, became a hospital. And and Justin would study for that test. He would go to work. He would also work a side job and come home, be with his son and his wife, and he would study for that test. And he studied for over a year. And he happened to got the top score as lieutenant in Dallas Fire Department. You're talking about he's running against almost 100 other firefighters who were studying for that exam. When when he decided to try for captain, and by the way, during that time, I was there with he and his wife when their son, David, four-year-old David, was in his arms as he left this earth to be face-to-face with God. And I had the pleasure of watching them grieve in a way that was filled with joy and the hope that knowing that they are going to see their son again, because they had the hope that was in Jesus Christ that surpasses all understanding. And I sat and watched as that house, as news got out, that house started filling with firefighters from all over Dallas. Some big burly men in tears who came to be and surround that wonderful family as they held David, his lifeless body, for a few hours as they said goodbye. So Justin is an extraordinary man just because of the way he has endured and walked through that very, very difficult time. And so when he decided to study for chief, it was the same thing, hours and hours. He studied for over a year. And to be a fire captain, to be a fire captain, you go through a test, same thing. Whoever's at the top of the list, except there's one difference, and that is that they're the top 40 or so who make that list. Then they are eligible to go to the oral exams. And those oral exams, they fly captains in from all over the United States, where where 3 of them at a time grill the applicant and challenge them on different dynamic situations and other things, and then score them based upon that. So make sure that it's not just head knowledge, but also experiential knowledge, and they know what they're doing. Because as I've learned, and being so close to the hoods, and I have another firefighter friend who's a captain, experience is the most important thing in a fire. And so Justin went through that process and made captain, which is an extraordinary thing. Then, a few years later, he decided he's going to jump in to try to go for chief. I was encouraging him. A lot of us were. And it was the same year-and-a-half long study, time after time, work. And when it came for the time for the test, again, just like the captain, you have to take that test. You're running against 60 other captains out there who want that position, the top 30. And Justin was one of those, get to sit for the orals. And then, just like before, however many chief's positions are open, well, that's who gets a spot when Justin made chief. What's important about it is Justin Hood is not just a fire chief in the Dallas Fire Department. Chief Hood actually serves McLendon-Chisholm. If there is a natural disaster, swift water rescue, whatever it is, the County of Rockwall has an interlocal agreement with the City of Dallas for their swift water rescue, for their emergency team to be deployed in Rockwall County. So if we ever are faced with a natural emergency, a natural disaster, Justin will be in command. His team went to Houston this year, and they were there on scene, helping those people get through that. So Justin's not just a guy sitting on the sideline. He's not just a fireman. He is an extremely experienced individual. And so, which is why, if you want to just say, well, he's the mayor's best friend and dismiss him, you're a fool. But that's your choice. Citizens, I'm talking to those citizens who actually, who aren't going to come up here and give propaganda, because that's what's been fed on social media. That's what we've been hearing over and over again. Let the voters decide on this issue. Well, first of all, the voters can't decide on this issue. The voters elected us to decide these issues, to be fiscally responsible. And there is a vocal majority who is making hay out of this situation. They are playing politics with our public safety, and it's despicable the way they are going about doing it, because they're not arguing about facts. We're presenting facts, but some people say, well, the facts that we're presenting they're not the right way to present them. They need to be objective. There's no such thing as objectivity in a situation like this sometimes. You've just got to ask yourself, is what is being said, is it true or is it false? And if it's false, well then prove it's false. Don't call names. Don't try and just undercut. Well, that's the mayor's best friend. You can't listen to them. Or hey, you don't really understand what you're talking about. I'm the smart one. Why don't we have a face-to-face? Now, I'll tell you what you're missing here. There's a lot of people who are trying to push forward a political agenda for their own purposes, and it is not to better the public safety of this city. This city council, I believe, with everything that we have gone through, and I'm going to go through in a very matter-of-fact way all of the facts so that you're not clouded by rhetoric. You're going to hear line by line how it is that we came to this conclusion. And at the end of this, citizens who are watching who are being lied to and misled on social media, I hope you listen and you take this into consideration. So let me go through the process. Let me go through some facts. And these are the facts that we considered when we went through this. The MCVFD averages less than 100 calls per year inside the city limits. According to the MCVFD, fires have accounted for just 7% of the MCVFD's total call volume in 2017. Medical, EMS-related calls comprise more than 50% of the MCVFD's call volume and was a primary reason given for staffing the station 12 hours a day. On October 1st, 2017, the new Rockwall County EMS ambulance service contract, which, by the way, I negotiated, I signed, and this is the contract that serves our city, became effective, which improved the guaranteed, let me say that again, the guaranteed response time for Priority 1 emergencies in McLendon-Chisholm from 11 to 8 minutes. The McLendon-Chisholm, the MCVFD says it will strive, in their proposal, they will strive for a slower response time of 9 minutes and 30 seconds during manned hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Sunday, without a guarantee. McLendon-Chisholm makes up just 1/3 of the total MCVFD fire district, and the other 2/3 is outside the city limits. Well over half of all MCVFD emergency calls service areas outside the city limits. Those in the fire district residing outside the city limits contribute nothing to their fire service protection. 83% of MCVFD's budget is funded by McLendon-Chisholm taxpayers. The remaining 17% comes from sales taxes collected in the unincorporated areas of Rockwall County and divided among all fire districts by the county commissioners. Based on the MCVFD's 6-year timeline, that was to culminate with the fire department integrating into the city. In 2014, the city council agreed to annual increases in funding, which was to staff the station during the day and invest in adding and improving equipment for the city's future. The city's funding for the MCVFD has increased dramatically since then, from $23,000 in 2013 to $320,650 in 2017. That is a total of $706,650. The average cost per MCVFD call has skyrocketed from $430 in 2013 to more than $1,600 in 2017. MC's ISO rating, that rating that impacts the insurance rating, for some insurance, not most, but some, of a 4.9 was established in 2012 when the MCVFD was all volunteer. Despite the $706,000, $650 in funding to have certified, paid two-man teams at the station in rotating shifts, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Saturday, with 2 new firefighting apparatus, that the city's ISO rating has not improved. However, in November, last month, the fire chief announced that the 11 members of the MCVFD had voted to rescind their commitment to transition into the city. The MCVFD fire chief gave the city just 3 2018 contract options, which were to either 1, continue with the current funding, 2, increase funding to add Sunday 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the station to be manned, or 3, return to an all-volunteer fire service. With 6 times the population of MC, Royce City, by the way, a comparison that we didn't go to, that was a comparison that the fire chief urged us to look into, which we did. Royce City continues an all-volunteer fire department with a 2017 budget that matches that of the MCVFD. How is it that we would support funding to MCVFD for substandard duplicate EMS service versus utilizing Rockwall EMS ambulance for medical emergency, which is already funded by your tax dollars? These are the facts that led us to make these decisions. We have been communicating. We have been open, and we have been accountable in all of these things. Thank you. By the way, when we were talking about the ISO rating, Royce City, with an all-volunteer department, has a 3.9 ISO rating compared to our city with a 4.9, and we have a full-time paid firefighters. The very fact that a former member of City Council came up and said that he's worried about lives, about people dying, about lives being at risk, it really bothers me that someone came up tonight and made fun of and wagged their tongue at the issue of smoke detectors. We're not saying smoke detectors is a substitute for fire department at all. We are saying that smoke detectors save lives. That's a fact, an immutable, incontrovertible fact that no fire chief in the world would dispute. Because in the biggest of cities, all over this nation, people die in house fires. Why? Because a fire department cannot respond until someone calls them. And if it's in the middle of the night and everyone's asleep and the fire has time to take over a house, there's little hope for those inside unless they're able to be awakened. So I really think that instead of dismissing and making a joke of the smoke detector issue, the point that we were trying to make was that it does save lives. And these are some of the things that we had hoped. When I gave my State of the City address, I had put forth a plan and a hope that the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department would train and equip, that they would train young men and women who want to be full-time firefighters, give them that training so that they can go to a big fire department and they can have a life with a salary with benefits. They didn't want to do that. But the other thing I was talking about was to equip the people of McLendon-Chisholm with education. So important Did they do it? No. Not going to do it. But all of a sudden, very interestingly and coincidentally, they decide that Thursday night they're going to do a little education seminar, which is a ruse. I think there's no integrity to it whatsoever. They're going to give a little class, but the whole purpose of that event to me is to drum up hatred and hostility toward this city council for acting fiscally responsibly. The fact is, most of the people who spoke last week, with the exception of one that I can remember, spoke about the EMS, about the need for rapid response in medical emergencies. We get that. That's absolutely right. That's why the EMS contract is so vital and so important. The rhetoric the propaganda, it's not rhetoric, it's propaganda that's going out is false, it's misleading, it's intended not to clarify issues, it is intended to divide. And the people who are doing it are the same people. I don't care to name any names. But I will tell you this I don't care that people expect, some are demanding to know who is it that supports us. No, that's a pretty despicable thing, because a fire chief with the experience, and by the way, the comparison, what does it take to be a fire chief in McLendon-Chisholm? You got to be a member of the fire department, and you got to get a vote of the majority of the members, and that's it. There's no standards. You don't have to have any experience. You don't have to have any qualifications necessarily. And the problem is back in 2014 when the city council embraced the timeline by a fire chief who had never been a fire chief before, who had never been a full-time firefighter in his life, basically took it whole cloth without looking at and really investigating, is this really the right way to go? Is this the right thing to do? But apparently that plan or that timeline, that is, we can't question that, because that's perfect. Forget what the experts are saying. Forget what someone who actually understands what running a fire department is. Dismiss them, because we just want to play politics. And this city council, frankly, if we were going to play politics, we would just go ahead and go with the contract the way it is. We believe that we've got to rise above politics, which is exactly what we're doing. And it is a lie for anyone to suggest that our minds were made up, which is a complete and utter shame, because the fact is, I certainly didn't think that we would end up where we did. I had every intention of working through this contract. I had every intention of trying to sit down with the fire chief and the lieutenant. And I can say that with absolute integrity. I don't care what people say. I know my heart. And my actions prove it. My actions prove it. With that, I'll open the floor to Mrs. Balcom for us to move on. If you want to discuss any more, you're welcome to do that. We can go into the feasibility study and that kind of thing. So you have the floor, Mrs. Balcom.
Well, I just want to say that before I go on about the feasibility, I just want to comment that, there was quite a number of comments that was made. I hope that you guys will remember some comments that were being made that we don't let you speak. There's a comment section for citizens to come up here and speak. We didn't stop anybody from speaking that night at the comment section. In fact, there was lots of negativity towards us, and whatever information that you wanted to share, you got to share it. whether it's true or not, or whatever opinions or, criticisms or, as the mayor said, propaganda, you got to say it. No one sat here with a hammer and said, no, you can't say anything, go back and sit down. You got to say it. There's been people that have emailed me and they wanted to, criticize me or critique me or critique other things on that other council members have said. And I offered, there's an opportunity for you to be on the agenda. If you have a solution, this goes for any citizen. It doesn't even matter if it's this particular subject matter. It could be about anything. I will help you get on the agenda if you want to present an idea, okay? And I will let you know, you have to have a discussion and action item so the council can be able to deliberate and give you an action, whether they agree with to vote on it, to make a motion for it. There's things that can be done, that your voice can be heard and be able to display your facts or what you want to educate us with. And I know that it can be done because I have done it. And I have been graced by people who were, Mayor Steinhagen was elected as a council member, and I'm thankful for Wayne too, because they both helped me get on the agenda before last year when I was trying to do the Severn Trent rate reduction. It was a little different. The other council members, they listened, including the mayor, and they questioned me and all that, and they have every right to, because that is part of the process. I am no different, at that time, I'm no different than what you could do too. So if you have ideas and you want to approach the city council with an idea and you want it to be discussed and have a motion to be made for an action item, please do. This is an opportunity. There was things that were being said at actually several council meetings ago, and including the last one, that were comments being made about there's things that we just don't know. You're right. The things that were being said is helping my case of why we need to do the feasibility case study. When I brought this up, let's see, what day did I do it on? October 24th. Our very own mayor, didn't really, he thought I was pretty much a little bit out there. We all have different opinions on different things, and we do have disagreements, but we all can work together. He let me do what I needed to do to present and share some information on insight there. And like I said, more and more reason, the things that you guys have said in the comments, things that's been said on social media, it gives more and more strong support to do this. And what the beautiful thing about this is that I am not doing this behind closed doors. People can be a part of this committee. Citizens, just like anybody else in the audience. I did request, I would like to have one person from Planning and Zoning, one person from BOA. I have another council member, which is Councilmember Turnbull. And hopefully, once the citizen survey goes out, we'll have more citizens to want to be a part of this committee. And what's great about this committee is that you're going to be a part of something for our future growth. Whether we review one case study or 10, it's going to take hard work. This is not something where we're going to be just sitting there and looking at each other. You literally are going to have to work in this committee. It's not going to be done just by me. And already, as many months as I have spent already just reviewing stats and contacting people, different cities. I've been talking to all sorts of people with professional experience in fire, city management, retired people who've been city managers for like 20-something years, 30 years. I want to do the right thing, and I want to do it the right way. I want to strive for the best, excellence, and I'm constantly thinking, you know, I want to make sure that we have the information in front of us to be able to do what we need to do. There's a lot of questions, what we really need. The citizen survey is huge to me. So please, the next citizen survey that's going to go out, please answer the questions that are in there. I hope that we have a large amount of people that are interested in being a part of this. It's important. A number of you have said over and over again that's related to emergency, like, you know, heart attacks, seizures, situations with I don't know all the details with disabilities and all that. All of that is describing someone who has experience as a paramedic and EMS technicians. And I'm sorry, I don't know all the medical terms and all that, but basically what I'm trying to say is that all of these things should be taken into account on what we need to do on the types of calls that need to be facilitated. We have 7% of actual structure type fires, like full blown on fires. We have more percentages, higher percentage of EMS calls. We need to take that into consideration. So I want to encourage you, this is a good thing. I want citizens to be a part of this because it's not only going to be just for our city. In the future, when we do if we do get into a contract agreement with the county the right way, then we can be able to offer these services to the county as well. If we have a city-owned, municipal-owned department and we have the staffing, the types of people that need to be able to do these types of services, okay? We can be able to offer those things. If that leads to, well, I expect to have like once we prove the study, to present to citizens, to have it kind of like a town hall meeting and get people involved to see the information that's being provided. You know, we're going to get input because we can't get it on the ballot. There was somebody said something, I don't know if it was tonight or it may have been previous council, was it tonight? Okay, there was and I asked this very question in the past from Mr. Pascal. I asked about, could this be on the ballot? Could we vote about this item on the ballot? And he said no, we couldn't. Now, we can vote for bonds on the ballot. We can do that. However, in my opinion, based on the past citizen survey, there is no way I can sit there and pass a bond without anybody knowing about it. I want to make sure that people are informed, like, hey, if this is something that you guys want, we need to get a town hall meeting so that we can get that type of support to be able to do these types of, this pathway, okay? And I would feel comfortable, and I don't know if, I can't speak for the rest of them on this council, but I can't get behind, like I said, if anybody wants to get a copy of this, you know, do open record request or actually go straight to the MCVFD website. You can look at it yourself and what their expectations were in 2018. They were expecting, they expected funding, but in addition to that, it was a $1.5 million new fire station in 2018. Again, there has been no plans. There has been no indication at all whatsoever. Even in minutes, you can, if you do your homework, there has been nothing, not even a transition phase, how that would look like. There has been nothing of that. I've asked the fire chief, I asked Herman Larkin, I've asked previous councils that served before, and also I've asked the administrator and the city secretary, and none of them can show that there was a transition phase, none of that. All that we have is this timeline, which basically is like a forecast of monies and little notes. That's not a plan. And if everybody remembers what I said before I started, before I became a council member, was that we need good plans. This is not a good plan. I don't have anything else to say other than, as far as the feasibility plan, is that we haven't had any meetings. I don't want to convey that there's been some meetings with a committee somewhere. I just want to make sure that we're waiting till the citizen survey to happen, and then we'll be able to get an official meeting. I'm hoping sometime in January, and then we can go from there. Once we get the committee members in there, we will start the process of doing the study. I do have inquiries. Resumes are coming in, and there's a lot of people that really are wanting to help. I'm getting excited about it because this is going to be something that we can work together on, and I'm hoping that it's going to be it's going to be challenging. It's going to be a lot of hard work, but it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for all of us as we grow together. So I just hope that you guys be encouraged and know that we're trying to do everything that we can to make the decisions that we do. And just because we didn't say why we made the decision after we voted, I mean, we've been talking about this, and we've been doing this for months.
We're going on YouTube Live.
There's videos, there's postings. I've made postings. I spent time doing a presentation. Councilmember Herron did a presentation. I can't force anybody to read any of the information that I provide. I get it.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
Mr. Woodham.
I just want to address a few little things and kind of give you my perspective and where I'm coming from. Everybody knows basically what my daytime job is.
The cashier?
Yeah, kind of. But I had can't really talk about this too much because still working through it. But I had some life events happen to me within the last 2 years. So I made some changes to get myself on a path that I needed to be on. Well, I'm at home and I'm looking around this area, the city, and I see some things that I didn't understand and I didn't really like. So I wanted to see what was going on there. So the next day at work, I send the mayor an email. I was like, he doesn't know me. We've never met at this point. I was like, hey, my name's Tim Woodham. I live in the city. I have some questions, some concerns, and I'd like to show you some information if I could. And I kind of gave him a quick little synopsis of what I was talking about. He responded back that day and said, absolutely. When do you want to meet? And where do you want to meet? Can you meet up here at City Hall? I said, sure. So after work one day, we came up here, we met, we go back there, and he goes, what's on your mind? I was like, well, this, and I kind of showing it to him, and I explained where I was coming from and all my concerns. He goes, okay. And he took the time to back up, walk me through it, and kind of give me the options. Okay, well, these are basically kind of what you're looking at, the different scenarios that could happen in each one. I was like, you know what, I appreciate you taking the time and showing me exactly. I got a lot better understanding of what's going on. I feel a whole lot better about this whole thing. Bumped into Turnbull when at the election out there, and I go, hey, I got a question for you. And he goes, what do you got? And I explained it to him. He did the exact same thing. He took time. He explained it to me. Went way out of his way. Both of them did to explain the situation. My point is if you want to understand something, or you want to work something out, usually the best way to go about it is to open up a dialogue. Now, in this other life that I live, I deal with a lot of the same situations. And I got budgets, I got different kind of budgets, and I got different kind of issues. Everybody knows it's not a secret of what we're going through down there. And they're tough choices that have to be made. And I had a meeting today at 9 o'clock with my new major. And the first thing I did when I walked into her office is the first words that came out of my mouth was, Major, I got a solution for you today. And she goes, really? Wow, I'm happy to hear that. And I did. I had my homework, and we went through it, and she did the exact same thing. She goes, I can't guarantee you everything. You're probably going to be not denied over here. I can almost guarantee you are. Over here, that's a good idea. You can probably run with that. We're going to work with that. Let's take that avenue, and we can kind of fill in some of the scenarios, and we worked through it. There was no loud voices. There was no fist pumps or beating on desks. It was a civil conversation had between me and my two bosses and I'm representing my employees. I got a certain band of brothers that depend on me, that they come to me with their problems and their issues, and it's my job to provide them, to the best of my ability, the resources to make them successful in what they're trying to do. So bringing it all around, my frustration is coming from a public servant. I don't understand ultimatums when people come at me in certain ways saying, I'm not going to talk to you, I only want to negotiate with one person. I'm not that way. When I negotiate for my people, I'm negotiating with whosever ear I can bend at that particular time. Let's go out to lunch. Let's talk about these things. We agree that we're in a bad situation and we're up against some obstacles that seem unsurmountable. But so far, I've been able to get over every one and push forward with all my agendas. And I know when I come in here sometimes, I get a little wound up and I say some inappropriate things sometimes. And if I do that, I apologize. I'm not trying to offend anyone. The way I run my shop is if you were sitting on my side that day when I was sitting in Heron's position, there was sheer hatred coming towards us. So with the way I run my shop at work is if they're too stressed out, I gotta liven the room a little bit. I gotta ease their pain that they're going through. If they're too loose, then I gotta reel them back in. I'm kind of that manager. I gotta make sure that we're on a steady barometer, that we're moving forward appropriately. We're not too high, we're not too low, we're somewhere in there in between. So that's my frustration is with the negotiations that have been going on, because if those are my choices and you're not willing to talk about this and work it out, well, hey, what am I supposed to do? I'm going to have to go at the end, and maybe we can build it back up into what I envision and from other people that I talk to. And yes, I have talked to a lot of people, and yes, they have expressed, and believe me, every couple of days I'm like, man, let me rethink this. Let me start out from scratch. What am I missing? Well, I've got to be missing a piece somewhere. And everybody I talk to, I explain it to the best of my ability, and these are even third-party people that have no vested interest whatsoever. They're like, oh yeah, no, I think you're on the right track. And I'm like, man, help me wrap my mind about it. Dude, I want to support them. I want them to write them a check. I want to give them the money that they need. All you got to do is explain to me why and where we're going and how it's going to be. 2 days ago, I wrote out a long explanation to kind of put out my point of views, but it's like, is it worth it? Is it worth it to put it out there just to get ridiculed, to get made fun of, to be called names and pointed in different directions? It's like, I'm willing to talk, but it seems like it's a one-way conversation. And things like that I can't grasp it. As a public servant, I was taught, Woodham, you have to look at it from the 30,000 point of view. You got to encompass everybody. You can't look at the 10-foot point of view where it just is you or them or one person. It's everybody. You got to look out for the entire city. You got to look out for your entire district. You got to look out for your entire division. And that's the way I operate. And to touch on your point for just a moment is you're right. $200 is probably not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's got to come to an end. We got to come to some agreement where it just doesn't keep escalating. I mean, when's the best time to really work this out? Now, where the budget's $300,000 and the population is what it is, or say we keep on kicking it down the road and the budget's $600,000 and the population is twice? Sooner or later, we're going to come to the crossroads, and it's hard. It's really hard. It weighs on me. It weighs on me a lot. And I worry about this. I think about this. I try to come up with solutions. I try to figure it out. I've come up with a dozen solutions, or in my mind, solutions of different ways to account for things. But it always comes back to, well, I can have every solution in the world, but if I ain't got nobody to talk to about it on the other end, then it does no good. And I wonder if they give the county as much grief as they give us, because they're in the same boat. I mean, why is it our sole responsibility where we're getting demolished week after week when we're doing the best we can with the situation we're handed, where we're put up here in front of everybody and we hash this? And I'm not into pointing fingers, and I'm not into accusations, and I'm not into name calling, but I do want a solution. And don't think I don't, because even my wife, she's mad at me. She's like, just signed a contract. And I was like, well, you got to understand, I owe nobody anything, and I have no incentive. And she goes, well, nobody's going to come to our house if it catches on fire. I was like, you're probably right. I was like, you're absolutely probably right. I'm probably completely on my own. But if that's a fact, if that's true, is that the real public servant you want working for you? Someone who won't even come to your aid when you disagree with them? I got called the name the other day. They were like, you put us all in jeopardy. And I was like, yeah, I got to disagree with you. And there was no dialogue. It was just like, you hate fire, your house is gonna burn down, you're gonna die. That's basically the message that I received. And I was like, well, it's a little bit more than that. And it's like, I'm willing to take this weight for a reason, because it needs to be addressed, it needs to be fixed, and if we don't do it now, I don't think it will. And that's the only reason. You're right, $200 is not a lot to most people, and I just think there's a better way. And that's the only thing, that's where I'm coming from. And I'm not trying to lecture to anybody, and I'm definitely not the smartest guy in the room. We all can agree on that. But I think we can agree that we all want the best thing for the city. And that's all we're striving to do. I promise you that.
Thank you, Mr. Woodham. I want to say a couple of things real quick, just to tag on to that. You know, the biggest thing in every city's budget is law enforcement over and above fire. I've never seen a city budget, municipal budget, where law enforcement is lower than fire. And when we look at, and we were just talking about the fact that we have an excellent sheriff's department that takes care of our county. And the conversations I've had is, all these cities that have started their own police departments look at their budget, and if you think about how hard that is on their mayors and their city councils, and once you pull that trigger, you don't go back. You don't go back to a county sheriff. But I think a lot of cities regret it when they take that dive into law enforcement. The second thing is, in addition to the lies, the outright lies, there are people who are so misinformed, and they post things that about which they have no idea. For instance, the mayor and city council should have had the city administrator negotiate all of this. Well, that's coming from someone who has no idea about what a general law city is. The city council and the mayor cannot, because we are a general law type A city. A home rule city usually has a city manager. The city manager in a home rule city is the CEO. They can negotiate. A city administrator cannot. The CEO in a general law city like this is the mayor. The buck stops with me. I don't pass the buck to bureaucrats. We deal with it here. And this city council, our city administrator, works on our behalf. They also made the accusation that they recommended to the mayor and city council no less than 5 times to move to mediation. Does anyone ever remember being told by anyone that we need to move to mediation? That's it. Yes. You do? Yeah. 5 times?
At least 3.
I've never been told that. The 2 of you have. Have you?
Yeah.
Never told me that. Never. If they have proof, I'd like to see it. So you got 2 people that they've told that to, but folks, if mediation would have been the answer, I would have done it, if I thought that was an option. But we have acted in good faith, and I wish that people who don't know what they're talking about wouldn't post something for which they have no idea about what they're talking about.
One moment, I'm sorry.
Yes,
okay,
go ahead.
if you're talking about remediation as in like having someone else to come in and negotiate on behalf of us or something?
No,
Between the two parties.
They kind of sit in between and make sure everybody's playing fair.
Okay.
But I've heard people talk about, oh, well, you need to have this person mediate and that person mediate, and we're all kind of scratching our heads going, are you kidding? Really? I don't think so. So I've heard about rumors of people saying that we should invite someone to mediate.
We've been interviewing contractors, city contractors.
No, we're talking about the negotiation with the
Well,
fire
I know, but
department,
we've been interviewing contractors over a period of time now. You know, like, they're talking to us, we're asking them questions.
All on video, by the way.
All on video. Like
Another lie out there.
The MC50 is no different than them.
That's right. Mr. Orchard.
Just one thing I want to, actually two things. And I understand that you're talking about, Chief Hood versus Chief Jones, you were trying to make the analogy of experience and what it takes to run MCVFD versus Dallas firefighter. But one thing is that there are certain qualifications that you must meet to be voted on. What those particular ones are, I can't tell you, but I know that as a lieutenant, as captain, as chief, there are certain stipulations that you must meet. One of those is not taking a test and going through oral exams, and I understand where your point was, but I do want to say that.
Is there an experience?
I think there's a level of certification that has.
Experience is not the issue.
I don't believe so, okay?
Thank you for correcting me, then I stand corrected, and
Well,
I apologize for misrepresenting. Thank you.
The other thing is that, watch what you wish for because you just might get it. You must remember that the three options were three options that were given by the MCVFD. And if they didn't want to take that third option, they shouldn't have put it out there. I think everyone knows where I stand, but it is also now my responsibility to take on the council's wishes and make this happen. So I'm going to do my very best and try to make sure that we do get to a resolution with the volunteer fire department for a volunteer only, because that is what the council has passed. That's what they have moved on. If they reconsider, then that's something different. But right now, that is where we're going. So I just want to make sure that people understand that that was, an option, and that option was taken. So it's a little confusing of then coming back and going, well, you shouldn't have taken that option. So, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Orchard. Mr. Herron, do you have any comments?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to address that, all of us up here, we're all residents of the city. We're all desire to have a working fire department. We all want to pay the fire department to do their jobs. The biggest question, I guess, is it comes down to, what do we really need our fire department to do? And so that's really where it came down to. And so both Ms. Balcom and I, we created some presentations, and we gave a presentation basically looking at what is it that, where expectations of the fire department to do. And the reality is, based on what we're seeing, is that the fire departments aren't doing fires anymore. And the majority of what they're doing today is other things other than fire. And so then that came down to taking a look at what our expectations, our requirements are, especially considering now that we have Rockwall EMS being available at a much quicker timeline into our city. Now, a lot of constituents out there said that, hey, they wanted to make sure that we had somebody who could respond quicker. I agree with that. I think that we ought to petition Rockwall EMS to position one of their ambulances at either here at the fire station or here at the city hall and have a quicker response time. I think that would be a justifiable expense that the city council could get behind paying for that. I don't think it's justifiable to have a fire department responding to emergency medicine situations that they're not qualified to respond to when we have an EMS that has 2 paramedics on board that will be responding to much quicker with the qualified people on there. That's just my position on it. And it's not anything against the fire department, it's just, it's reality. If 53% of their calls are gonna be EMS, why wouldn't we want to have EMS responding to those calls? So if we're gonna pay for EMS to do it, why don't we pay for the right EMS to do it? Emergency medical services. Let's have an ambulance respond to that. If the fire department's only responding to 7% of the calls are fire related, okay, then there's not really a reason why we should be spending $329,000 for 7% of their calls being that. And saying that, okay, well, some constituents are okay with them spending $1,600 to go unlock somebody's car, or like in the most recent call logs, to go out there and put gas in somebody's car because they ran out of gas. I'm thinking as a city council, we could decide whether or not it's more advantageous to the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm for us to go and contract with a locksmith for so many car door openings, or AAA to have them come out and go and park behind with a tow truck with the lights flashing while somebody changes a tire or deliver gas to them. That'd be much cheaper than $1,600 a call to send a fire department out to do those things. I don't think that's what a fire department's supposed to be doing. And I know that there's passions and everybody thinks that that's what they want them to do. But the reality is we've got to look at this, what are we spending the funds that we're responsible for on? And I think that we should be fiscally responsible and we should spend the money properly. So if they want to have us to unlock car doors, then let's do a contract with a locksmith. Because what we're doing is technically, we're having the fire department compete with people out there who are locksmiths. Why are we doing that? We're basically causing a problem in our own community because we're having paying our fire department to go do something that somebody has as a job. That's their livelihood. And we're basically, subverting that industry from them because we're paying for somebody else to go unlock the car doors. Same thing with you have a sheriff's department, we have
EMS.
state troopers, and we've got tow trucks that all could go do that, when somebody's got a flat tire or somebody's got run out of gas, they could take care of that things. And I think it would be much cheaper, like I said, to get a contract with AAA and see what it is for X number of, we can kind of look back over a year and see how many calls that we've had of that kind of thing and say, okay, what would it cost for a contract with this many calls per year? I think it would be much cheaper. I'm on order of probably maybe one call, the $1,600 would probably pay for an entire year's worth of AAA service. So looking at it from that perspective, a lot of people think that we're done this because we have some kind of agenda or it's something against the fire department. We've looked at this specifically based on what the costs that were going on. And some of the things that, just for me personally, that struck me the wrong way, and this is something I told Mr. Butler when he asked me why I hadn't voted the way that I had voted, was that there was a time where the EMS was actually at lunch at the Sonic, there at the Shell station, and somebody locked their keys in the car, and they had the person call and get them dispatched out to unlock the car door, even though they were already there. And I asked him, when he was a police officer, I said, what would you have done in that situation? Would you have had them dispatch you out, or would you have just gone over and unlocked the car door because that's a good Samaritan thing to do? He goes, yeah, I just wanted to unlock the car door. I said, yeah, for me, that's kind of striking that if that's happening on the surface, I have no idea what's going on below the surface, which kind of makes me concerned that how many of the calls are padded and what else is going on that we don't know about. And so that concerns me. If they're calling out to get called out to do these kind of things, it's very concerning because we're paying them and funding them to be a fire service, and they're doing all these other things to add the numbers to justify their existence. I don't have a problem paying for a fire service to do fire-related stuff. I don't have a problem with paying an EMS service to do EMS-related stuff, if that's what they're doing. But I have a problem when we're funding them to do things that I don't think that are valid requirements for what we're paying them to do. And that's just my position. And this is no emotions about this. This is not to attack anybody. It's just looking at this conservatively and looking at this on the surface, it just doesn't make any sense. And when I went back and I looked at the historical information for a city the size of ours and the historical information about fires and the trends and everything that's going on, it didn't justify it. 4 years ago, when they made the decision to start paying them to do staffing during the daytime from 7 to 7, they didn't have justification when they did that. And so I don't think that we have any more justification today to continue that. And that's where my position and the reason I voted the way that I voted, because I don't believe that there was any justification to go down that road, nor is there any justification to stay that course. The cities around us who have volunteer fire departments are all thriving cities, and I don't think that they're doing any worse off than our city will do if we go into being all volunteer service. And I don't believe that there's a reason why the fire department can't act as a volunteer fire department. And so I think that we should be able to come to negotiations and move forward. I don't think that this should be the big problem that it's come out to be. I think that there's a way to move forward on this, and everybody should be amenable.
Well, and I think, Mr. Herron, there's a lot of information that needs to be learned, as far as things that they do, don't do, we see reports, you were talking about the gas, and it just says gas. I don't know if that means, did they go get gas? Was it gas leak? Or, there's a lot of things that we need to have that dialogue, need to have that communication. That isn't right now. But there's a lot of questions that why I'm going to lean on this feasibility study is because we say, you know, is that, okay, in 3 years, you know, it was going to be a 3-year contract because in 3 years we either have MCVFD come in or we build our own. Well, what does that cost? What does it even mean, you know? So that's what I'm leaning on this feasibility study for, is to understand those things. And I would hope that one of those people that would be on this committee would be someone that is on the existing MCVFD, a willing participant that, you know, doesn't have an agenda in it, that wants to come to put good input into it, you know, because there's those questions of what is it? Where is that threshold? How much is that? You know, we throw out $1,600 a call. Well, that's just because we took the money and we averaged that out. And well, you know, and they're doing this and that. You know, man, I'd rather have them going and doing this and that than sitting, you know, just twiddling their thumbs in the fire station. You know, that's just my opinion. You know, but I think that. Where is the appropriate amount of staffing? What the proper certifications, like you said. So if it is, you know, over 70%, whatever, what's the figure on the EMS?
53%.
Yeah. So you know, so 53%. Then you're right. Then man, if that's the majority, it'd be kind of like saying, well, let's have paramedics run on fire. Well, no, so it would almost, you know, be where you can have, you know, firefighters that are also paramedics, EMTs, you know, that, and they do have some of that, but where is that balance and stuff? And I think that's the big thing is that there's, you know, two sides and no one has all the right information, you know, and hopefully that's what, again, I'm you know, really looking forward to, and I hope that this gets done. 6 months is what I'm looking at. That hopefully that way it's in time for budget, it's in time for preparedness, and we can move on to, okay, what does that look like? You may come back and go, you know, well, hey, this is fine, or this is what we need, this is what we need, and you know, that was the, you know, the one of the big things on, and you're saying, okay, what, you know, why did people vote a certain way, was because I didn't have enough information, you know, for myself to say, yes, we can go directly back to straight volunteer, you know, because I don't know what that implications are. I do know that we do have better EMS services now than we've had at any point in time, and I hope that continues. And you know, I asked the mayor, because he is on that committee, of have they met their standards? And there's been one time that they have not, and they got penalized $14,000.
28,000.
Well, no, it's because there was two
Well,
incidents.
yes,
One
it was-
inside,
right.
One was inside here, and so they've not met their standards. Two different incidents, and that is, you know, there was some reasoning behind it because of the new system that they're running. But regardless, that's their problem. You know, that they had to pay out $28,000 because they weren't somewhere on time. You know, that's kind of the model that we're looking at, going, man, you know, that makes some sense. You know, so I think this next year, guys, we're going to get a lot of information. Hopefully off this feasibility, hopefully with the fire department. But I think that, you know, again, this council has made their decision, and we just have to figure out how we're going to make that work.
One of the things you said, and it's a good point, you don't want them just sitting at the station twiddling their thumbs because we're paying for it, and that's the point. If there's not enough demand for them to be running emergency calls, then why was that decision made in the first place, and why wasn't that more thought out? When I first came on council, I spoke to a firefighter, and asked him if he had thought about being part of the volunteer fire department, and he laughed. He said, yeah, I talked to him, but here's the problem. They want me to go on every call. They want me to go to all their meetings. They want me to go to all their trainings. I do all of that. What I'm trying to tell them is, if you've got a fire, if you've got a real emergency, call me. Oh, no, we don't do that. You got to be part of our team. And he's like, look, I was trying to do a good thing. I'm a professional firefighter. I have other things to do. We have created, I believe, I'm arguing, based upon these, the fact that they're going on all of these calls, and they're required to go on all of these calls, we're creating a system where it is, unless you're retired or out of work, you can't be a volunteer firefighter in McLendon-Chisholm. If we would be focusing on emergencies, major motor vehicle accidents, real heart attacks, things, real life-threatening emergencies, or house fires, or field fires, we would have, I believe, quite a few of these professional firefighters who have already got their benefits, they've already got their insurance, they are crazy trained, and they've got incredible experience. But we've chosen that we want something different. And everyone thinks that it's better because we haven't had any problems, you haven't had any complaints, so why do you want to stop it? And that's the wrong question to be asking. Mr. Turnbull.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to put out some information that may or may not affect anybody's opinion. And I want to pose one question that I really do not understand. And there's a final item that I want to address about what took place on November 14th, but I'll start with the information. November 1st, I sent Lieutenant Larkin an email requesting any and all evidence that he had that the fire department received instructions or entered into negotiations with the city to develop a paid personnel plan. I still have not received that information. I have gone through every minute from current back to 2013. There is no record of the city council ever demanding or requesting premium service. They accepted and voted on the budget, yes, but there is no evidence that it was their idea. So to claim that we requested it, we being the city, previous city councils, is insupportable unless the fire department can provide information that I requested that they didn't deliver. The next question I have is what is magical about 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.? Everybody has talked about the EMS calls. They have talked about fires and having manned personnel. How is it that you can go to sleep at night with an all-volunteer fire department who's going to take 14, 15 minutes at best, well, at least that's what we put in our contract, to respond to your house if you have a heart attack or if your house catches on fire, and you're okay with that? But during the day, you want them there in 9.5 minutes, if they can make it. I don't get it. The chances of you getting out of your house and not being hurt if it catches on fire when you're awake during the day is much greater than you getting out if you wake up in the middle of the night in a smoke-filled room with your smoke detector going off. So, if somebody would like to explain to me why that 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is magical, I would love to hear it, because I don't see where it does that much good. On November 14th, that was the night that Chief Jones stood at the podium and announced that membership had voted to suspend the 6-year plan, their 6-year plan, and not to come into the city. That night I asked him if he thought his membership would consider a very unique and different type of contract than any that had been presented to him. And he said, sure, send it to me. I said, but there's something that you have to answer first. It requires you to come into the city, and it requires you to transfer the assets that we have funded through our depreciation / replenishment, depending on which term they used, funding to the fire department to buy. And both of those things they had voted not to do. And he would not tell me if he would present that to his membership if they would change their mind. He wouldn't even give me his opinion, his personal opinion, if he thought he could get a member to vote to rescind their previous votes and to consider coming into the city. And that is the reason why they never saw that contract. And that contract gave them everything they asked for and guaranteed it for 3 years. But he wouldn't negotiate. He wouldn't even talk about it. All he said was, send it to me. So, yes, I'm a little fired up about that. Because I came in that night thinking we could get this done. And instead, we were told that everything that we had based our plans on, the plans of the previous councils for the last 4 years, the apparent gentleman's handshake was worthless. It no longer applied. And for that reason, I'm not going to give them that kind of money anymore. The other reason is, when I moved here in 2013, it was an all-volunteer fire department. I knew when I bought my house that it would probably be 2 men and a truck show up until surrounding cities got there. I was okay with that, because I made an informed choice. So, for those who have lived here a long time, who suddenly, after 4 years of different levels of paid service, are suddenly unable to live with it, I don't get that either. But for anybody to say that we have not tried to work with the fire department, it's false. And if you want to go back and look at the tape and listen to Jones tell me that he would not guarantee me or even attempt to motivate his men to consider a contract, then you tell me why I should negotiate, because I don't see it. And I'm sure there will be people just ripping me apart on social media, and that's fine. I didn't take this job to be popular. I took this job, or ran for this job, asked for it, however you want to phrase it, because I wanted to be part of this city and try to do what was right. And throwing money to a private company that can, just like it's very possible they're going to do, say, we're going to leave you high and dry, is not the right thing to do. It wasn't in 2014. It wasn't in 2015, 16, or 17. And as far as the gun held to our heads, every one of those meetings, you can look at the notes, you can listen to the meeting recordings, And there is the very subtle but plain threat. If you don't pay us this money, well, the guys will just go home and you won't have a fire department. The guys can't live on this money. They're gonna go find a different job. Every year, it went back to the same thing. So, I'm sorry that I'm getting emotional. Everybody else held it together, but that's the reason I voted the way I did. Nobody had an idea that I was gonna make the motion I did to go to an all-volunteer fire department. It caught everybody on this panel surprised, because I had been for doing a 3-year contract. And it didn't make sense after they took coming into the city and us getting our equipment that we funded back. It's just, to me, it's throwing good money after bad. So, that's all.
And I want to also point out that as an act of good faith, I agreed to step aside from the negotiations. People don't want to focus on that, but I did, and I was on, and I can say that with integrity, that if the chief and lieutenant were willing to come to the negotiating table to meet with Wayne, Mayor Pro Tem Orchard, and Mr. Turnbull, I would have stepped aside gladly if it would have gotten this thing moving. Remember that in 2014, it was, we can't get volunteers because we can't pay them. We got to pay them, so we paid them. And then what happened this year? Well, we got to have benefits, we have to do that. Well, it's a never-ending cycle. One person did ask, why 33 months in the contract? That's real simple, because we don't want to have to go through this every year. So we tried to establish, and it was one thing that we all just kind of agreed on, we don't want to pass this buck. Let's deal with it now, and then take the next 2 or 3 years to establish what is our next step.
Mr. Mayor, may
Yes, sir,
I
please.
expand upon that?
Yes, sir.
It also was done with the assumption that on October 1st, 2020, at the end of the 33 months, the fire department would be part of the city budget that would have been passed before the September 30th, 2020. So there was no reason to carry the contract past that unless there is a project timeline that ends up running longer than what we expect. But that was the goal, is to end this at the beginning of our fiscal year. And by the way, that also was the same time frame that was on their 6-year plan as for them coming into the city. So we used, or at least my contract and what I presented, used almost everything that they had. There was no big surprises. We did put performance requirements, and I never had a contract that I didn't have, well, we referred to them as SLA, service level agreements, that I either requested or demanded, or I was expected to meet, and I was penalized. And contrary to some, no, I was never knowingly giving a contract where I gave them enough money that they could afford to pay me back if they didn't meet their service level agreement. And I never signed a contract where I was the provider, where I upped my fees so that I could meet any service level agreements that were expected of me. That wasn't the way it worked where I was employed. Now, if other people can get that type of a gig, more power to them. But service level agreements are put there to incentivize. And if you're paying for them to your vendor to be paid back, he's not incentivized. So, again.
Mr. Orchard?
I just want to make sure that those who maybe tuned in late or didn't get this, why each person is kind of going through this, is that a citizen asked tonight, why did you vote the way you did? Because that wasn't clear during the night of the voting. And so whether you agree with these guys or not, you got the answer to that question. And so I appreciate them coming out and putting it out there, because yes, as you know, Councilman Turnbull said, it can be used right up against you, but at least you know where everybody stands on their issues. So just again, I wanted to make sure that people didn't think we're just trying to rehash this. It was in response to a citizen that asked, you know, for that.
Well, and I also want to say that just like the Rockwall County EMS contract, that has Rockwall County's name. Rockwall County EMS is performing a public service on behalf of the county. So when someone said, well, you don't expect your accountant to meet these kinds of standards, do you? Well, right, we don't. We don't expect our landscaper to meet the same kind of standards because they're not performing a public service on behalf of the city under the city's name. That's why our contract actually has measures of accountability in them, where before there were none. And we have done everything we can to work in good faith. And I can say with integrity, and I don't care how people want to paint me, I have, in every step of this, I have tried to see and find a resolution. And the problem is the people who keep saying, well, you're not listening to the people. Well, you're not being transparent. You're not being open. The fact of the matter is we're not telling them what they want to hear. Every one of us, it feels like we're talking to a wall sometime because we're not saying what they want to hear, so we're not doing it right, or we're not being transparent, or we're not communicating. Just because we disagree doesn't mean that we're evil. And you're not evil either. One thing Mr. Kippitt said, he said that I agree with, that government doesn't do, there's not many things government does very efficiently. I agree with that. And except for issues on like providing for a public, for a common defense, for building roads, and for public services where I believe the role of government is always to do the most good for the most people at the least cost. The way these contracts have gone in the past have done the least good for the fewest people at the greatest cost as these years have gone on. If we didn't stop the train now, as Mr. Woodham said, I agree. It would be moving too fast to ever get it stopped and corrected. And that's what's amazing. Why don't cities do this? Why do no other cities do things like this? Well, because we get this. We get propaganda, people trying to make political points rather than really trying to understand and work with us and alongside us. And so Thursday night, there's going to be a big brouhaha to gin up anger and division. And if you disagree with them, you will, I feel sorry for you. Don't go to that meeting if you want to stand and disagree with them. I have citizens.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I disagree with that. Please go to that meeting and please disagree with them. Not because I want you to side with me.
I think it's going to turn into a.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
not because I want you to side with us. I want you to experience what will happen.
No.
Because then you will know that that's how they will treat anybody who stands up against them.
I had a citizen call me and said, Robert, I would really like to come out and support you. I'd like to do something on social media, but frankly, how can we? Now, her concern is if I stand up and support you, well, then the way they framed this whole thing is, then I'm against the fire department. Are they going to slow walk a call to my house? I can't see that I can't allow that to happen. Well, if they're willing to just walk away from the city, if they're just willing to pack up their bags, if that's what they're
We're making assumptions.
no, that's what they've said. If you don't want to pay us, well, then the guys will just get up and walk on home, walk away. But if that's what the concern is of citizens. That's why people aren't coming out and speaking, because they're afraid, and rightly so. We had a fire chief, a man so experienced and qualified, get eviscerated on social media. If it can happen to someone like that, there's no hope. Can we change the discourse? I'm willing to, but I'm not going to just lay down, and I'm not going to tell my supporters of ours, hey, go out there and speak your mind. No, I don't want them put in that position.
Well, one thing I want to make sure to draw across is that there has been communication. I specifically through email. I've made phone calls, and I know everybody on. Well, I can't speak for you because I haven't seen anything, but I know that there has been other the council members have contacted Jones or Larkin. So there has been communication for quite some time through email that I know about. I know I've made some personal calls. I know that there has been calls from Heron. Are you shaking your head for that? Okay. And also to address that, Steinhagen stepped in for the previous mayor, Hodges. Before that, he was elected in 2016. He was elected.
It wasn't self-appointed.
He was not self-appointed. The city council at that time, when was it, May? It was May whenever there was a vote on the council, and they voted for Councilmember Steinhagen to be to serve the remaining time as mayor. So, and also, I don't think it's legal.
No, it's not.
It's not legal.
To self-appoint. Yeah.
Correct. So I just want to make sure that that's addressed. There's comments being made like that, and that's.
And they lose credibility. I don't understand why people even do that, because you lose credibility when you post things that are so outrageously false. But that's.
Anyway, so we can
neither here
move
nor
on
there.
now. Let's
All right.
focus.
On the citizen survey on number 12, the citizen survey is just about done. We're ready to roll forward and launch forward. So it's just about done. So we're hopefully over the next week, 2 weeks, we will be putting the mailing together, all of that stuff, but as far as the survey itself, it's ready to go.
So the question I have, because I know
Yep.
it's going to happen, is are we expecting it to go out in this month or?
Yes, I want to see it drop in December.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah.
And
So
then-
can still be called a 2017.
So the collective data that, oh, and this is another thing, if nobody knows, is that, Steinhagen was the one that suggested to do a citizen survey, which, by the way, is typical of other cities. They do try to do citizen surveys. This will be our next one. So how long do you think it will be? I mean, just to estimate, like how long to get the information together if it does drop?
You want it for your committee, right?
Yes.
Well, that can come out anytime you want, so we can have Lisa pull those because that's so anyone who wants to be a part of the committee for fire safety committee that wants to be a part of that and considered. You'll be able to apply right there after the survey. So it'll be a completely separate survey. You'll go into a new window, a new survey where you can put it's an email opt-in where you're able to put your information, and then you're able to join, volunteer for committees, nominate a Citizen of the Year for 2017, and other things like that.
But just so I want to make sure that people don't have to wait for that survey to come out if they want to get.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
With
that's true.
Adrian.
Just go right to, yeah.
You can just email Adrian, if you don't have her email address, or here's her home number. Let me give that. No? You're up with 2 kids in there? Okay. But email Adrian directly and get on that committee before, seats are limited.
Okay, so
Got it, Lisa. Yep.
do we need to do any other discussion on that?
No, I don't think so. Let's move to Code of Ordinances review. Lisa, so you guys are gonna be happy about this. So go ahead. Why don't you tell us what you found? Lisa's done an amazing job.
Okay, you want me to, on the Code of Ordinances that we discussed earlier?
Yeah, what they can do for the legal review.
Okay, I talked to Kirk Franklin of Franklin Legal, and I kind of gave him a little bit of an overview of what your intentions were about going through the Code of Ordinances thoroughly and simplifying as much as possible, getting rid of redundancies, and, if it's covered by the state law, can we remove it, that sort of thing. He gave me a little bit of history as to when he took over doing our codification, and said that originally it was done by a company that was not from the state of Texas. So it did not have a review by a Texas attorney, and they may not have been, the previous company may not have been very well suited to kind of provide a full legal review. And when he took over, they offered to do a full legal review and said they noted that there were some issues with the current code, but the council at that time decided they didn't want to do the expense. He says for considering what you're trying to accomplish, for about $1,500 to $2,000, their company could do a pretty thorough review. They would flag items that need to be attended to because state laws change or because it's covered, or just little inconsistencies in the code or little errors, things like that. He would also come to meetings and listen to what you all want to do for various chapters and try to incorporate all that, then bring it back kind of as a package, and then let you make comments and adjustments and so forth. And then he would adopt it as a kind of a comprehensive new code. And he says that, he says it would be easier for him to do, and I talked to David Pascal, and David Pascal says that's a bargain.
Yes. Well, yeah, because I was going to say, because every time we would have to go back to Pascal, was that correct? Is that correct? Pascal would, we're getting harped on about legal fees, that $2,000 for what we need done.
Yes,
It's
and
gonna be a lot cheaper.
Mr. Franklin is actually going to be in town. He's based out of Lubbock, but he's actually going to be in town the week of our next council meeting. I've invited him to attend, and he's willing to do that. So he's expected to be here the 9th to discuss that with you, however you want to proceed. He's happy to go over the process with you, what that might look like. And it's not that what you're doing is not great. It is. The intentions are wonderful. It's just that it's going to be a long, painful process. And we just kind of thought this might be better, meet everybody's needs a little bit better. And it really, if you look at the cost of the big picture of things, it's not so much.
Lisa?
Yes, sir.
When did they take over?
I'm not sure exactly. I can find out for you.
Okay, please.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. What do you think?
Kind of thought you might be.
I thought this was therapeutic for you. This big old book.
We were looking at 2 years. I was like, oh man, this is gonna be a long process. Well, let me move on. I don't have any announcements. Does anyone have any announcements that they would like to? How are we doing on roads?
So tomorrow night, actually Thursday night. Thursday night, which is actually in the same time as the fire station's gonna be doing. But the P&Z is gonna have John Polster. He's gonna be here. He's from the roads, and so he's gonna come and talk to us. So I'm gonna be here for that, for John to come here, and we'll be talking about the things that are affecting the city as far as roads
Who's
go.
John Polster?
John Polster, he works for the Department of TxDOT, and so he's basically the guy who handles all of our area.
So what I can do
At the
is,
county.
I can come and set up Facebook or YouTube Live so people can see what he says.
Okay.
Would that be?
And if anybody has any questions specifically for him about 205, 549, or any of our roads, send me an email and I'll definitely ask him.
Can I just remind you about the turning lanes? Like,
Yeah.
just to make sure that we get that addressed, because I know
Yeah.
that was.
He owes me that as a response back. That was something Mr. Kippett had asked for, and so he owes
Did
me
you hear
that.
that, Mr. Kippett? You're putting that on the questions.
Okay.
So gonna be here for P and Z, and then you're just gonna be in attendance, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to be in attendance so that I can, if anybody has any questions, I have a couple things that I'd like to talk to them too about our county roads that we have. They're kind of in pretty bad shape, and, see what if there's anything that we can get done to those roads.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So Thursday night, at what time? 6:30?
Yes, 6:30.
6:30 here at City Hall. All right, any other questions on the reports and announcements on financials, building reports, any of that?
I forgot to send a press release to the newspaper for who won.
Yep.
Also, I'm working on the website, the phase 2 version, still working on it.
Yes, the website's driving me crazy. Awesome. All right, Mr. Turnbull, would you like to make a motion?
Actually, no, I want to share one thing.
Oh, you have, oh my goodness, what?
We just got the financial reports. I've not gone through them all the way, but we are ahead of schedule on our, well, I've been told not to refer to it as a surplus, but we have a positive balance greater than what the budget expected us to as.
My wife explains to me.
If you call it a surplus, then those people who like to say you're spending money out of the reserves, they don't
Okay,
get to do that.
but, so far, we've had, actually a little better than expected building permits. Our expenses have been a little lower than what we expected, not a great deal, but, and as I said, we just got them tonight. I haven't had a chance to really go through them very thoroughly, but, no great surprises one way or the other. And with that, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Turnbull.
You ran over by 13 minutes. It is 10:13. It is time to adjourn.
Okay, my fine is only $10 tonight then. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Orchard, the motion passes by unanimous consent without objection. This meeting is now adjourned.
Guys,
Merry Christmas, everyone.
By the way, the gasoline that's on the report, that's at the Shell station. It's 120 South Highway 205.
What is it though?
Well, it could be a leak, could be anything, but it's certainly not putting gas.
It's not giving someone gasoline in their car.
No, not at a gas station. I just saw the address, is why it.
But wouldn't that be a hazmat rather than?
Oh, fire run, they run, I mean, it's, we're gonna run hazmat.
It doesn't seem, yeah, it doesn't seem like gasoline is the right code.
Yeah, I'll have to see what a 411,
And that's the reason I asked you.
well, it says gasoline or other, so yeah, that's why I said, I don't know.